How you doing today? So for those of you who are watching right now, I'm working on a little Santa Claus. This is for a custom order that came in. Someone wanted a little Santa Claus bead, and they had a picture for me to work from. So I'm trying to make that up as close to the original as possible. It's another beautiful day here in Indiana Beach. The weather is nice and warm, sunny. There's a group of kids who are taking their photos in the coffins right in front of Frankenstein's castle. They're all wearing matching green outfits. I myself was here a lot when I was a kid, and it's wonderful to get to see all these new generations of kids coming to Indiana Beach and having these same types of wonderful experiences that I had when I was a kid, because it was such magic then, and even now, being here every day, it's still magic. And I'm so lucky to be a part of that now. What I'm doing here is I've got Santa with his little basic head shape. The hat is kind of on there. It's still a little primitive at this point, but I want to switch over, and I'm working on just adding white right now. So I'm going to put a handle on to the top. That way I can then remove the bottom handle that I started with. It's a little bit on the short side. I can remove that, round it out, and then add Santa's beard here in a second. The green t-shirts are multiplying. What was 5 now looks like it's easily 10 or 12. I'm just putting on white all across the back here for Santa's hair. And as I'm removing, I'm giving it these little twists that'll give a little bit of extra texture to the outside, creating a little bit of a swirl pattern to the back of Santa's little head there. And I will heat that up and smooth it out just a little bit, because the image that the original person who put in the order, the original piece that this is kind of based off of, had a little heart on the back of Santa's head. And so I want to make sure that it's not so textured on the back here with hair swirls that I can't put the little cute hearts onto the back. Nope, it looks like there's a little pocket here that needs a little extra color. So we'll add that in here. There we go. So there's the back of Santa's head. Front's still got to be worked on yet, but it's coming together. I think I'll do the back little heart here, so that way that part is done. Now the red is really, really finicky. You have to be very careful with it and not have too much oxygen in the flame. So you'll see the little candles area here gets really bushy and soft. And that's to avoid letting the red glass get so hot that it boils. And it'll boil and get kind of bumpy, and texturally it just is very unpleasant to the touch. And so we want to have this very soft flame and use out here where the flame is actually a little bit cooler. And so I'm going to go in now and just put 2 dots, one next to the other. Oh, that was a little bit big, so I'm going to heat that spot up, put my glass in here and rotate at a 90-degree angle and remove just a little bit of the extra. And I'll go in. So there's that 1 dot. I'll heat that up, bringing it out to the softer part of the flame. Smashing that down just a little bit here. And then right next to it, I'll put another dot. So what I'm doing is I'm keeping the Santa's head just below the flame, right at the bottom edge of it, so it's getting kind of a little bit of warmth there and staying soft and ready to apply. But it's not so hot that anything is changing shape. And now I'm just going to gently add a little dot here. Once again, removing the extra. I'll let you see that where there's a little too much there, so I'm going to take this, just remove it gently. Alright, now I'm going to let gravity pull that little dot down, that extra there. Gravity's using its force on it, and I'm getting it so hot that it's becoming liquefied and flowing down. Now I'll use the little marver here. This is just graphite. There goes the train. Now smooth that out a little bit. And now I'll go in one more time. Now this got really, really lumpy because of all the extra I pulled off. So I want to heat that up. Smooth it out. Good morning, folks. So I'm kind of melting that in. There we go. That looks beautiful. Start with a heart. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Welcome to the Glass Phoenix shop here in Indiana Beach. Is this your first time here?
Yeah.
Oh, well, welcome.
Seeing this.
Yeah, seeing this? Well, I'm glad to have you here. Right now I'm working on a custom order little Santa Claus that somebody requested. On the back there's a little heart that I'm just putting on and shaping that up. It's almost to the point that I want it. There we go. Got a little heart on the back there now. I'm just going to melt that in so it's relatively smooth. Now that we've got the heart on, we're going to switch and put some eyeballs on and the little nose and such. The eyes are just going to be black glass. So I'm putting the Santa bead just below the flame so that way it stays nice and warm and tacky, and getting the black glass really, really hot. Little touch, pull, and a fire cut. Touch, pull, and a fire cut. Santa's now got 2 eyes. Now I'm intentionally leaving those as they're kind of like raised up. And I'm not going to go in and like smooth that out yet because I know I'm going to still be adding so much heat and doing so much more work here that those will eventually just melt in and smooth out anyway. And Santa's got rosy cheeks, and so I'm going to put some little extra, like a darker pink on for their rosy cheeks. So finding the right spot for that, getting the darker pink really hot, and keeping the Santa just below the flame again, so that way it stays warm and tacky. And this got to be a little bit thick, so I want to just beat that up and kind of spin that pink into a finer point using my graphite marble here on the torch. Okay, now that I've got a little bit finer tip, I'll go in and just place that right there on his cheeks. 2 of those on there. Once it cools down, you'll be able to see a little bit better, especially if I turn it sideways. Sideways, you can kind of see the raised up area. And those I am going to kind of give a little bit of a mash to right away, because those are supposed to be flush with the rest of his face, whereas those eyes are going to be melted in, and I want those to stay textural and right up across the surface. That looks good. And now I need to put the nose. The nose is also going to be raising up off of the face. This is back to that original first color that I had. Here in the video on my screen it looks like it's white, but it's actually a really light pink. So what I'm doing again is just heating up that face, keeping it just below the flame, so once again it's staying warm. And when I say warm, I'm trying to keep the glass at about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. There we go. And I see this has the little stick of glass that's in the fire has got a nice, really white hot glow to it, which means that it's closer to about 1,700 degrees Fahrenheit. Make sure I've got a good connection there. That looks great. You can kind of see that a little bit here. As the glass gets really hot, it transmits its own light, becomes incandescent, and so it's hard for the camera to pick that up real well. But as it cools down to below about 1,000 degrees, some of the color that it emits of its own will dissipate, and so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. It's not going to be exactly true to its final color, because when it's above 1,000 degrees, a lot of the colors are going to change. Like right now, that red for the hat kind of almost looks black, and it won't be down to its true like cherry red until it gets down to room temperature. But that's looking pretty good. I don't know if you can see that really well yet. Now, the image that the individual sent to me has Santa's cap having a really light blue band of color right across the brim. So I'm going to add that in now. This is a stick of glass called periwinkle. And this is way too thick right now for me to work with for what I'm looking to do. So what I have to do is make a stringer. And to do that, it's really simple. You take your glass, get the end of the rod so it's glowing really, really hot. And then you just touch it, like I'm leaving this one out of the flame altogether. It's just kind of staying by it so that way it stays warm. And then I'm going to touch the two together outside of the flame, just barely touching the two, and I'm then giving a bit of a pull. And that stretches it out, and because it was outside of the flame, and this one was pretty darn cool, and this one was really, really hot. There was a large difference in temperature. And what that does is it creates that connection point, and as you leave it out, they'll just pop off eventually. When this one really starts to shrink because it was so hot, it had been very expanded, it shrinks and cools and shrinks and cools and shrinks and cools, and then it pops right off because there was so much stress between the two. And because I'm now going to be working with such a fine little piece of glass, I really want to reduce the size of my flame to just this real fine needle point precision flame here. To me, with my glasses on, it looks like it's just a little fine needle. Looking in the video monitor here, it looks like there's actually significantly more than what I'm seeing. And with the glasses, it gets rid of all of the orange flake you're going to be seeing and just gives me a real tight blue image to work with. Alright, so now what I want to do is get a bit of an orange glow across the Santa bead, allowing me to know that it's above 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And then once it gets to that temperature, I know that it's warm enough that it's really going to stick well and it's going to flow in. And at this point, I'm also watching as the black Santa's eyes are kind of melting in as well. This is kind of fine work, so I need to pause here and just kind of be quiet as I focus. Because I wanted to do it right. Okay. So I'm going to melt that in just a little bit. Now that it's on there, I can increase the size of my flame, giving more energy to melt to that end. You can see that there's it's kind of bumpy yet because I haven't melted it in all the way around, but there's a blue band right across the top of Santa's hat. I'll go in and just pause for a minute here, letting some heat soak in, watching all of that glass melt and become relatively smooth. I still leave some texture. Nope. And it looks like it's a little bit uneven in one spot, so I can use my little dental tools and adjust, reshaping my lines and getting it nice and straight again. Santa's coming together quite nicely, I think. All right, a little more tweaking here of these lines to get everything just right. What do you think? Is it turning out well? Let me know in the comments. That way I can actually know what you're thinking about what's going on here. And if you're liking this, I'd love to hear from you. Okay. So now that that's all kind of coming together, the original bead that I'm working from, or the image that I'm working from, the original bead, has a lot of little swirls that are very textured across the surface of Santa's beard. I will now go in and create another share of the light. Once again, getting Santa's just kind of warm, not hot enough that it's even going to glow, but intentionally getting the stick of white glass that's in my right hand, so it's really, really hot, bringing the two out of the flame, touching together, and then stretch. Creating that stringer. Now what's touching against Santa's beard is a little bit thick for my taste, so I'm actually going to fire cut, shape that end up, and now I've got a real fine, even, and consistent length. And that piece right there, I'm going to gently tap that right off. So now I can go in, once again reducing the size of my flame to a nice precision little point, and adding these little swirls all across the surface of Santa's beard. Swirls all over the place here. and I've run out of my stringer, so I need more. So once again, put Santa in the back part of the flame so he stays about 1,000 degrees. Get the tip of my flame, tip of my glass, up to about 1,500–1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Touch that and stretch. This one has a much better outcome overall. Look at the length of that. Perfect. Hi folks. Okay, we'll go in, finish the texture all over Santa's beard. And we'll do some texture across the back of his head as well. Lots of texture. That's looking pretty good. I'll melt in a little bit of that. Well, I can see that there's a spot that needs a little bit of extra love. So I'll get on top of that real quick and add some additional interest. That's much better. Okay. I'll melt that in a little bit, making sure that it's got a good connection all the way through. That's great. Okay. Now I'm going to switch and put a handle on the bottom of Santa's face here, so that way I can then finish off the top of his hat. There we go, putting the two together like that, quickly tapping the top of Santa's hat to remove that initial handle and warming everything up. And because there's a little bit of a sharp edge there, I want to make sure that I'm melting that in. Okay. Now Santa's hat has a little top to it that flips down, and it needs a little fluffy ball on the end of that. And I will go in here, add just a little more of the red to create that kind of point to his hat that's flopped forward. But because the stick that I've got here has that kind of extra glob on the end, I'll heat that up, and I think I'm just going to use the tweezers to grab that, get it hot, pull it away, and keep that nice little point. Now Santa's been out of the flame for a couple of seconds here, so I just want to get him back in there, keep him about 1,000 degrees. Take a look, and looks like Santa's going to look pretty cute if I bring the edge down here like this. That's looking great. Now he needs a little poof ball on the end. So the stringer, it was a stringer, but here in a second, we'll just melt that back into a larger piece, gathering up that, what is now going to become a tiny glob. No longer a stringer. I'll just put that right on the end of Santa's cap. That's looking pretty good to me. I want to go in right across the top here and make sure that everything is melted in nicely, and try to avoid any sort of weird undercuts where the glass might unevenly cool, because that's where stress can build up, because you may have a thick piece of glass where the heat is going to more slowly exit, and then have a lot of surface area that goes into an undercut. And if I can avoid that, all right, that looks much better. Okay, So that's where I'm going to end this project for the moment. I'm going to put it in the kiln, which is sitting at 1,100 degrees. That's going to keep it warm long enough that I can move to the next project and take a look at the photo to make sure that I'm getting exactly right, because that's what they wanted. So I need to give them exactly what they want. The next project here is going to be somewhat similar because it's a little guy wearing a hat and a beard. But this one is going to be a gnome. Now, I'm going to have to take a... Oh, I do have the stick of glass that I wanted for the face. The first step on here is to increase the size of our flame, using much more fuel and adjusting the oxygen levels to get a pretty even mix of propane and oxygen together here. Now we've got this nice bulky flame, plenty of heat that we can work with. And I'll introduce this stick of glass. This is called caramel. It's got a lot of gold in it and a little bit of silver. And it does neat things depending on your flame chemistry. And by chemistry, I mean how much oxygen propane we've got. Whether it's an even mix like we do right now, or whether there's more propane or more oxygen. And with this even mix that I've got right now, we're going to see that there's going to be a little bit of a metallic haze that'll kind of build up across the surface. It's not going to be real prevalent. If we wanted it to be really, really reflective, we'd use a very propane-rich and oxygen-starved atmosphere or environment flame setting. We're going to build this up, lift it up a little more and more. And just trying to build a mass, and this is going to become the head of the little gnome. And you can see that gravity is just continually pulling this mass back, and gravity's going to pull it down. How's it going? Doing great. I'm working on a little gnome right now. Just getting started. This is going to be the head. All right. This gnome is going to have a green hat. I'm doing it live YouTube right now. Yep. All right, we've got ourselves a little head here. I'm taking the green glass. I'm going to melt onto the top of this and add this jaunty little cap across the top of this head. We're going to build up some mass here. I want to get a little bit thicker than the head to begin with, just right around the base, so that way I can then pull it out of the flame and give it a stretch. So just quickly building up some mass here. And that looks like there's a good quantity. So I'll take it out, let it cool just a little bit. And now gently give it a tug, and we're stretching that into kind of that cone shape. That's looking pretty good to me. Now I'll go in, fire cut through the top of that. Now I'm just using the edge of the flame, bouncing it in and out, because I would want to do a controlled cut, so that way it winds up with this really fun, long, pointy hat. There we go. Now the colors are kind of hard to see. They are not true at this point, but we can see that the green is starting to become green again. And I can see that because I stretched it outside of the flame, there's a little bit of a texture called chill marks that it's started across there. So I want to heat that up just enough to get a bit of a glow in it, So I can watch those little wrinkles that have formed across the surface, melt those in, and get it all to smooth out. But I don't want to get it so hot that gravity is going to pull that hat and have it go all wonky on me and change its shape. But I'm just looking to get it to go from being this kind of matte surface across there to being a nice reflective glossy surface again. There we go. It's starting to get nice and shiny. You can see the reflectivity. And as I rotate it here, there's a little bit of that kind of texture you can see. So I'll heat up that spot again. Just gingerly placing it in there. And watching for a gentle glow. And even with the glow, we can still see the reflection across the surface. Loving it. Alright, now the point on this hat seems to be a little bit too much for me. I think I'm going to wind up breaking that, or maybe the customer might wind up breaking it. Plus, I want to be able to remove this handle. The new handle right on the top, and it's going to go right onto the tip of that hat. So to do that, I'll get both things that I want to attach together really hot inside the flame. And I can see there's a little bit of color right on the tip of this clear stick. I don't want to contaminate the green with another color. So I need to heat this up. I'll use my tweezers here. Once I see the end of this clear stick is molten hot, I'll pinch that, pull it off, and throw the extra into the water to rapidly cool that and make sure it's safe. It doesn't start any problems in the booth. But now that the color contamination is gone, I'll put the two together here inside the flame. Boop. And because they were inside the flame when they came together, we know that just like water is going to flow together, the same thing with the glass here. It's just going to flow together, sticking in there, and now I've got a nice solid connection, just that quick. Next up, let's remove this portion that's going to be the net, or that is currently a net. It's way too much fire, so we'll reduce the size of that flame and fire cut right through that. Do a little twist here, rotate, and now we've got a little head. And I want this to stay more of a sphere, so I've got this wonderful marble. It's got a couple of cups in there. I'll just take that and smooth it out, making sure it's rounded, but it's still got a little bit of a neck shape to it. Now, gnomes usually wear hats that match their clothes. So once again, I'll increase the size of my flame. And you know what? To keep this safe, I think at this time I'm going to put it in the kiln. Keep it at 1,000 degrees. It'll make it so I don't have to constantly keep one hand close to the flame rotating. And now, I can take this stick and just gather up a glob of glass. And this glob that I'm working on now will become the body. Relatively slow process gathering a significant amount of glass. So to expedite that, I'm going to take the tweezers here and just kind of grab onto the molten end, heat it up, and then pull it on down and just gather that up. My little bird friends are here. You can hear them tweeting at me, asking for food. How you doing today?
I'm well. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful, thank you. Just working on
a lot of nice stuff here.
Oh, thank you. We're getting closer. Because my tool was getting a little warm from touching the glass over and over again, you have to be careful with metal because it will stick permanently to the glass, and then the only way to get it off is to break the glass free. And you can do that by quenching it in the flame or in the water once it's been inside the flame and it's really hot. That's looking like a significant amount of glass. So I'm just going to switch hands because my fingers are getting a little warm. Let gravity kind of grab onto it and pull it so it's more like that. There we go. And just going to get heat all the way around on the inside of that to watch the little creases and undercuts kind of smooth out, because we can see maybe there's some kind of ridges and things, and I want this to become much smoother. So I'll just hang out in the flame. I'm going to soften it up a little bit by increasing the amount of propane versus oxygen. I just let it bathe inside the flame for a little while. Watching all of those creases smooth out, getting rid of all of the ridges, and occasionally rotating it as needed, because gravity's going to keep pulling it downward, and I need to keep the mass more or less centered and on that central axis, so that way it doesn't go awry. And the more heat that you get inside, the more you have to rotate it, because gravity is constantly pulling on it, and it's becoming more and more like a runny honey. There we go. Now I'm seeing a lot of those creases and undercuts. In my with the glasses on, it looks like they're like dark shadows in the glowing glass. There we go. That's looking much better. And I will go here with the marver and rotate that, creating a bit of a tapered edge to it. That's looking great. But now I want to momentarily add a handle to the top. So to do that, I'll get both pieces so they are in the flame, have a nice even glow. And then once I see they both are glowing really well, I'll take them outside the flame, touch them together outside of the flame. And what that does is allow them to get a little bit of stress in that connection, so later I can tap it on the torch, it'll break right off. But while I've got that still doing its thing, I'm going to move to the bottom here and fire cut through the base of the glob that I had created. Once it's kind of pulled through, I do a little twist to get rid of any stringers that might want to form. And we'll go in, get the end of that really, really hot, and grab our marver again. Once again, this is just made out of graphite, which is just like your pencil lead, and it's just pure carbon, which is kind of cool. Okay, so we'll heat up the bottom here, or what is right now the bottom, and heat that to the point where it is really, really hot, and go in and just kind of give it a little bit of a smash on this marver. And what I'm looking to do is create a nice little base shape that I can set this on, and then add some feet to, and I'll build off where here's the connection is at. The rod is where the head and hat and such are going to go. But right now, we've got ourselves a little green body, and we'll put some little black shoes or boots on the bottom, sticking out from underneath his robes. So to do that, I've got myself a stick of black glass, and I know that this particular type of glass really likes to be bathed in a lot of oxygen. So to make sure that that doesn't get any weird graying across the surface, I'll really increase the amount of oxygen in the flame to avoid something called devitrification. And that's essentially just where the glass starts to crystallize and builds up what looks like a gray surface haze. Sometimes it can be a useful thing to be able to develop if you want it, but right now I don't. So I've increased that oxygen level, but I know the green doesn't like an extreme oxygen level, so I need to be relatively careful. I'll look at the two sides. I like this side for the front and that side for the back. And so now I'll find the edge of the flame, put the green just below it, so it's kind of getting a little bit of an orange glow right at the spot where I want to connect the two. And while the two are both in the flame and nice and hot, I'll put them together inside the flame and watch everything flow together like water. Fire cut through the tip of this. Boop. There we go. And now I'll go back into the flame and let heat make everything nice and smooth. And I'll let gravity pull it back towards the top of the piece. Once I see that everything is really molten and glowing at that 1300 plus degree range, like it is now, I'll once again go in using my graphite marber and give it a little bit of a pat, just trying to keep this surface flat and flush all across the bottom. And that's going to become one boot. There we go. Let's put on a second boot. We'll grab this same stick of glass again. Gather up a glob on the end. Takes a second here for the mass to build up. And we'll stick the green body just below the flame, looking to get that nice orange glow across the surface where I want to connect the two together. Once I see both pieces have that nice consistent orange glow in the spots that I want to connect, inside the flame, I'll put the two together, allowing the two to flow just like water into one another. And then I'll take it out just for a second to make sure that it's got an even connection and it doesn't look quite as thick of a connection as I want. So I'll stick it back in the flame, get it hot on both sides so that way gravity can pull some of that black glass into the area where I want a firmer connection. There we go. Now it looks like the two boots have about the same amount of mass coming out. And you can see, there we go. We've got two boots sticking out from underneath the green robes here. Oh, hello folks. How are you all doing today? I'm wonderful. I'm just working on a YouTube video here of my making of a little gnome that somebody had ordered on Friday, and so now I'm putting it all together now. Now, if you have any questions about anything, let me know. I'm happy to show you anything that you have questions about. Alright, we've got our boots on our body here. I want to smash everything down a little bit and get a nice flat surface so that way I know it'll stand up. There we go. We've got our boots, we've got our body, but we need to put some little arms on, and my stick of glass is getting pretty darn short, so I need to grab another stick of green. And it looks like all I've got are shorts right now. I need to keep the gnome warm, so I'll try to get him to hang out in the back part of the flame as I weld these together. There we go. Those are now connected. I'll bring them over to the marber and roll that across the surface so that way it gets all the little extra ridges and bumps out and make sure that everything heats and cools evenly, getting rid of all of the extra stress. And now that it's got a good connection, I'll warm up the body again, just keeping it around that 1000 Fahrenheit temperature range. And, oh, yep. All right, everybody, I'll be back. I'm about to go help these folks out. So I'm putting the body in the kiln. I'll be with you again in just a few minutes. Now, is this your first time here?
No, not at all.
Have you seen my work before? That's like the puzzles?
No, actually, we were only here for him, so we didn't actually get to like play around.
Yep, you'll look exactly like that. And that's a level 1 or an easy. They go up to level 3. They get difficult.
Oh, okay. I was like,
Here's your receipt. Here's your food.
well, thank you. It was nice to meet you.
Thank you. I hope you have a great time at Indiana Beach. All right, I'm back. Let's see here. Where was I? Oh yeah, making the feet and such. Before I do that though, I think I'll take this short and add it to this stick that I just made a minute ago to give myself a little extra length to work with. So I'll just add these two together here in the flame. Melt everything together until I see a nice orange glow, and then inside the flame, put the two together, take them out, and just like water's going to turn to ice when it gets cold, the same thing here. It's getting cooler and cooler, losing that glow. While it's still at that temperature though, we can tell it's about 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's getting cooler and cooler. Alright, that looks like it's at a nice solidity temperature, so I'll put that down and go back to finding that body. Okay, we've got the gnome feet and body there. We'll go in now and we'll add just some little arms here. So once again, we're looking to get, actually I think I'm going to switch handles because that connection I know is weak. And I don't want to, and I want to make sure that it doesn't weld permanently to the piece. And to avoid that, I need to switch handles to a different location. And the bottom of this is already finished for the most part, so I can just warm that up to about 1300, take it out of the flame, let this get really hot, and then cool a bit. Touch the two together, and while that connection's still malleable, I can hit that. And it already melted in and a little bit more of a solid connection that I wanted. And that's exactly what I was trying to avoid. So now I need to go in, heat up that clear glob or stick, turn it into a glob, and pinch it and pull it off. And there's one pinch and pull. We'll heat up some more. Another pinch and pull. That should be good. Okay, now we can go in and add some arms. We'll heat up the end of this stick and the edge of the body here, right at the area where we want it to be the shoulder. That looks like it's too much oxygen, so we'll reduce the amount of oxygen we've got. There we go. That looks great. We'll connect the two inside the fire, rotating it to get evenly heated all the way around. That looks pretty darn good. So we're just going to hang out here for a second, letting some of the temperature move out of it, and then droop that arm down and fire cut through. Shape it a little bit here while it's nice and hot on the marble. And we've got ourselves a little arm there. And now we'll go in and put the second one on. So once again, heating up the shoulder and this new arm inside the flame, looking to get that really intense glow in both areas. Inside the flame, we'll make the connection and watching as the glass flows together. Heat it all the way around to make sure that we've got a good solid connection. Excellent. So now we'll pull that out just a little bit, watching some of the heat dissipate out of it. And while it's still barely malleable, we'll bring it down, making sure that it connects evenly across from the two sides. And we'll fire cut through the bottom here. Get a little more. It's looking good, almost there. And a little rotation. Boom. Looks good. I want to make sure that these two are even, so I'll heat up the bottom here of this one. And that tool is just too big and blunt. We need to go in with a little tool here, heat up again, and just shape that gently. All right. That's looking pretty good. Let's put the head and the hat on this little guy. But, yeah, let's do that. So we've got our little gnome head, little body. We'll put the two together. And then we'll put a beard and nose and eyes and all the rest of the little stuff on. Okay, we're going to rotate the two, getting the bottom or the connection points really, really hot. Using the edge of the flame to get the edge of these two pieces so they're both glowing well above 1,300 degrees. That's when the glass starts to really become incandescent. And once we see that it's got a really solid and consistent glow between the two pieces, I'll put them together inside the flame. So that way everything once again flows together nicely. Rotating all the way around to make sure it's evenly and consistently melted in. There we go. That's the start of a gnome right there, for sure. All right, I'm getting excited about this now. Let's fire cut through the tip of that hat. And we'll melt in that point just a little bit. Okay, we now have our little guy. We want to give him a beard. So what I'm going to do now is use this white glass, get it so it is crazy, crazy hot. Building up a nice sized glob here and keeping the gnome's body just kind of in the back part of the flame, letting the white stick of glass absorb the majority of the energy and using some of that radiant heat on the back side of the flame to just kind of gently warm the gnome's body. I'm trying not to get any one part in particular to the point where it's a kind of glowing so hot that, or so hot that it starts to glow. but instead looking to just keep it above that 1,000-degree threshold where I know it's not going to crack and do any sort of damage to the piece. Okay, now we've got enough glass to work with, but I want to smash it out and flatten it into a bit of a... Kind of see that it's no longer really a glob, but instead more of a flat disc. I'll readjust my body here so that way I can put the beard on. So I need to reduce the size of my flame a little bit so that way I have exactly the size flame that I need and not extra. Because if there's too much heat, we're just heating everything, and that's when things can go awry, and you can have the whole piece change its shape and get real ugly real fast. Alright, but now that I've got just the beard area that I want to apply on the face and the beard itself hot, I'll go in, rotate the body and the beard together, making sure that everything is getting a nice solid connection. Rotate back. Oh, not quite. There we go. Got ourselves a little beard on there now. We'll go ahead and pull that down a little bit and fire cut through here. And I need to be gentle and careful so I don't lose all of everything that I did. So I'm just kind of bouncing it in and out of the flame, getting what I want hot, and letting the rest of it cool so I can keep the shape. Now I want this beard, which is not connected to the body yet, to be connected. So I'm going to use the flame and get it to blast right up and across the belly and the back side of the beard. And then I'll use my graphite tool and smush that back. Use the flame on the front side of the beard, and then once again, smush that back. Now, we've got a big old beard on that little gnome. Okay. We'll put some eyes on, and then a great big nose. Oh, this is my black stick of glass. I'll get the edge of the face so it's glowing with a nice orange glow. And I've got a little too much oxygen in that flame for that skin tone. If I use too much, it's going to get dark. And I want it to stay kind of goldy and a little bit reflective. So use the edge of that now that I've got the flame setting right. Touch, pull, and fire cut inside the flame. Oh, come on, move. There we go. Just got a big old eyeball sticking off the top of that in the front. And this piece got all wonky, so we need to heat that up. Melt it in just a little bit, so that way I can then straighten it out across the surface of this marble. That looks much better. So now I want to heat up just that spot where I want the eye to go on, and it's a much smaller area this time. So I'm going to really reduce the size of my flame so I'm not getting so much of the body hot, because I really don't want it to change shape. I'm looking to get a nice even glow in there. There we go. Touch, pull, and fire cut. And now that that's on, I'm intentionally kind of leaving those so they're raised up, because as I go to put the nose on, there's going to be so much heat that goes into there that it's just, those eyes are going to melt in. But I'm working with a larger stick, so I need a larger flame. We'll increase the size of our flame, making sure that once again we keep a little more propane than oxygen in our flame setting here, because I want the skin tones to match. And I'm using gravity here to build up the mass on the end of the little tube that's in my right hand, and keeping the gnome in the back part of the flame, so that way the radiant heat is just kind of flowing out and around the stick that I'm creating a glob. Just that radiant heat's going to keep that gnome warm. That's looking great. Alright, now once again I've got a small connection point, so I need a smaller flame. So so I can get the precision work done. Heat up the two inside the flame, looking to get that nice orange glow. And I will, once I see both of them are glowing really intensely orange, I'll touch the two together. And I'll give a little bit of a pull down here. And I'll melt everything in. Those eyes are still a little bit bulged out, so I'll just add some extra heat into there and let it really start to melt those in, making sure there's a solid connection, and everything just looks pretty. Melt, melt, melt. All right, that's looking better and better all the time. But you got a white beard and you need some white hair around the back. So let's do that. Okay. Now we've got a little more space we can work with. Right now it's just a little stringer. So I'll just quickly just add that in and get to the point where I can use more of the massive glass here. There we go. And I'm just adding in and adding in. Melting the glass on and slowly rotating both the white stick of glass so that way it's getting evenly heated all the way around. Because what will happen is if you don't rotate the stick that you want to apply, you'll wind up with the backside that's away from the torch, not quite as hot as the side that's facing the torch where the energy is coming in. And it can cause you to wind up having things pull funky in different ways. Now this is, to me, is looking way more like a little than it is a gnome. What do you think? More wizard or more gnome? To me it's looking like a gnome, or like a wizard, I don't know. Either way, we're pretty close to being done though. I'm going to melt that in a little bit more, making sure that the hair in the back looks more or less consistent and even all the way around. And just adding that to kind of, oh, I like that. That's, to me, that looks pretty good. Okay, so at this point, I think I'm going to call it quits on this one. The next thing I want to do is warm up my tweezers so I don't thermally shock the glass. Warm that up. I see a real light glow in there. So I'll grab the gnome here, tap the bottom, and warm that up to get rid of any sort of weird sharp edges. And once I get a nice even glow across the bottom, I can then bring it over to my little marker and flatten out the bottom, making sure that everything is nice and smooth. I don't trust my hand to be level, so I'll bring it over, sit it on my bench, and it's setting up just fine. So that piece is done. Put it in the kiln here. How's it going, folks? I'm wonderful. Are you having a good time at Indiana Beach today? Awesome. All right. Let's see here. What was next? Oh, I've got to make a green implosion flower. So to do that, we're going to need that same stick of green that we just put together and a different shade of green and yellow. So give me a second as I fetch all of that. Got some mint green, some canary yellow, and some sparkly galaxy black. This is my favorite of the blacks that are now being made. Okay, so now we've got our dark green, our light green, our yellow, and our black. Everything that we're going to need as far as color to make this piece. But we also need a little bit of clear to implode the flower into. And I want a larger stick of glass than what I have been using as far as the clear is concerned. This one will work. This is I think 19 millimeter, if I remember right. Nope, that's not right. This is about a 12 millimeter. This is 19. Okay. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get rocking and rolling here. We're really going to increase the size of our flame. Now we've got lots of energy and heat to work with. And we'll just heat up the end of this. We want to gather up a nice sized glob. Now it's important to continually rotate back and forth. I'm just going one direction and then the other back and forth, and allowing the heat to evenly migrate into the center or the core of this stick of glass. Because as you can tell, glass does not like to transmit heat very well. And that's why I'm able to hold on to a stick of glass throughout the entire project and never have my hands burned. Whereas if it was a steel rod, after just a very short period of time, it would get so hot that I wouldn't be able to hold it anymore and I'd have to continually cool it. And the same is with the glass rods here, where if I rotate back and forth, we're going to wind up seeing the heat evenly migrate into the glass rod from all sides and get into that core. And then we'll wind up with a more consistent piece by the end, because we're evenly heated it and made sure that all the way throughout the entire mass we're at about the same energy level and viscosity. And holding the end of the glass rod down, so that way gravity is going to continually pull it back down towards the neck here. You'll see a little bit of that here now. And once I've got a decent sized glob, about the size of a dime or so, I'll then kind of transition from being where I'm holding it downward like this, and instead really focus the heat right on this leading surface. So I'm tilting it away from me and letting the heat migrate into the piece from this leading edge, which you can't really see much of. There we go. And it's going to migrate in towards the handle. I'm still rotating to get the heat evenly into the whole thing. And I need to grab my graphite marble here, because once I get this really, really hot, I'm going to take it over to my flat surface right about now, smash it down, and then smash it from both the top and the bottom to create a disc. So we've got a central axis with a disc here, and that's the surface I'm going to work with now to create this flower. What I want to do now is once again create a stringer. Those of you who've been here for the entire live stream will have seen this already, but those of you who might be new, what I'm going to do is just kind of keep the disc warm, and I mean about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, while I heat this green stick of glass. I want to see a nice, really consistent orange glow through a significant quantity of glass here. And that looks like that. Once I've got that happening, I'll just kind of touch it to the edge and then pull slowly but consistently, creating a nice little thin string of glass. There we go. Once we've got that, here in a second, it should just pop off. But if not, I'll tap it on the edge of the torch, and it just pops right off. Now you can kind of see it's a little bit thicker here and thin and consistent all the way throughout the rest. I'm going to pull that little piece off using my tweezers, because I want to have nice consistent lines that I'm drawing with. There we go. And I'll just drop that little extra bit into the little jar of water I've got on my table. I want to do this with my yellow and the two different greens to get these nice little pieces of color that I can draw with. And I'm keeping the disc close to the flame so it's staying in that nice consistent temperature range of around 1,000 degrees. And once I see the yellow has a nice consistent glow to it, I will then once again kind of touch it to the edge and slowly but consistently give it a nice tug and watch as that line develops. Oh, and it just popped right off as it got cool this time. Now once again, I've got a little bit of a spot here that is a little bit thicker than the rest of it down here. So what I'm going to do again is just heat that up, and actually this time I reduce the size of my flame and heat up just that one little spot. Heat up to just the tip, make a quick connection, heat up just that one little blob, and then try to pull that a little thinner. Oh, and it didn't really work out, and I don't want to waste my time. So I'll just grab that, pinch, pull, throw that scrap away into the water. So now we've got our dark green, our yellow, and now we'll move on to the mint green. Increase the size of our flame so that way we can get a little more done. Alright, looking to get that nice consistent orange glow throughout the entire tip of the glass here. We've got that again. So now I'll just take the two, touch them together outside the flame, and slow, consistent pull, creating that nice stringer. Awesome. I'll fire cut through because once again I got a little bit of an extra glob on the end there. So we've got a nice consistent stringer and a little excess piece right there. Now I'll just tap that into the water. Nice disc to work with. So now I'm going to start by taking the yellow and right in the central axis here where that hub is at, right in the center, I'm going to warm that up so it starts to get a nice little glow into it. And once I see it starts to glow orange, and it's good to really reduce the size of your flame because we're using a really small piece of glass, so it needs a small amount of heat. Okay, here we go. Now that we've got that going on, I'm heating up just the spot that has that central hub, and I can see right through the center of the clear glass where that's at. And I'm going to take the yellow, heat up just the tip of it and the flame, and then fire, just touch, pull, and then fire cut through. Heat up, touch, pull, fire cut through. Heat, touch, pull, fire cut. And I say this all the time as I'm teaching my students because having that little mantra of like heat, touch, pull, fire cut. Heat, touch, pull, fire cut. Heat, touch, pull, fire cut. That just kind of gets you into the right mindset and keeps the whole thing in your mind. And this is what it looks like now. See how all of those little dots are more or less right in that central hub area? That's perfect. What I'll do now is just kind of gently heat all of that up. Once again, using my graphite marver, I'll just heat that and give it a little bit of a little pat. So now everything's more or less kind of flush with the surface. That looks great. And now we'll go in and around that little area where we've added all the little dots of yellow, we're going to go in and add green lines. This is going to be the dark green. I'm going to do the exterior outlines first, and then I'll put the green interior lines second. Alright, so I want my disc to get a nice orange glow to it. Once I see that there's a nice glow, I'm going to add my lines. Trying to keep a consistent line thickness as I go. And you can see here that I've now got the There's 4 lines. I don't know how well you can see it there. And I'm going to do 4 more, kind of alternating the lines a little bit further out, but filling that negative space that was between the petals originally, or those first lines. Just kind of going in, using just the edge of the flame. There we go. Okay. Let's see if I can get that so you can see it a little better. That's not working either. How about if I do this? Okay, you can kind of see the lines that are on there. There should be 2 sets of green lines and then all the yellow dots. Now what I want to do is just inside towards the central hub add a second line of this light green. Just right on top of and just internally of that dark green. So I want to get my hands all ready here. Use just the edge of the flame. So I'm watching all of my lines get so they're nice and orange. And then I'll apply. There we go. And as you want, as this gets hot, once the color starts to glow orange, you can see things a little bit better. Unfortunately, I don't have another camera behind me, so you can see what I'm talking about. But here in a second, once I'm finished, I'll get everything nice and orange hot for you, and I'll show you what I'm looking at, what it looks like to me as I'm working. Okay. Kind of see those lines there? What I'll do now is just melt everything in, and to do that I'll just increase some of my flame. I'll let you see what that nice orange pattern looks like once it gets a consistent temperature across the entire surface. There we go. So that's kind of the pattern I've created. It's a little easier to see when it's incandescent. So now we've got a pattern in there, but we also want to create a little additional depth into the final pendant, and to do that we need to find a couple of locations where we want to take our little dental picks and tools and push into this clear disc. So once again I'm going to reduce the size of the flame because I want to have really isolated areas where I'm working and manipulating the glass and not changing the shape of everything else that I've done previously. So I'm heating a specific spot, getting it to the point where it's glowing hot, and then I'll go in, heating those areas, and then manipulating it. Heating, going in, and manipulating. And what I'm doing with this time is I'm both pushing into the molten glass, creating some depth, but I'm also pulling and dragging the glass to create an additional shaping and texture piece. Go. And you can see what I'm doing there as far as the pattern work. And we're almost done and ready to move on to the next step. Got 3 more little petals to work on, 2 more to work on. And we're down to the last petal. All right. There's our final pattern. I don't know if you can see it there through the camera. It's a little bit off, color-wise, but hello, miss. How are you doing?
Good. I'll come back on and get some.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be done with this piece and done with all of the live stream video in probably about 10 minutes.
That's right. I don't bother you.
All right, so now we want to have a lot of work done, and we're going to change the amount of flame that we've got here. What I want to do now is take this flat disc and turn it into a convex surface. So to do that, the first thing I'll do is just kind of let heat migrate in, and I'm really just focusing the heat on the disc itself. I've got it angled so the heat is hitting that disc and flaring out to the side, and it's not getting the back side of that disc. I really want to keep it away from the handle that I'm holding onto. But once we've got it hot, we'll then go in and just kind of rotate and bend that surface back just a little bit. And while I'm doing that while it's hot, it's, for one, kind of bending the surface back, but it's also melting in all of the raised up color that was there. And we'll now rotate a little bit, and we're going to, the key aspect here is to consistently and without stop rotate this piece of glass. We want to keep it so it's rotating from the torch and upward, so that way the glass is becoming molten as it gets really close to the flame, and as it rotates to the top, it's going to become a liquid and roll down and around the sides and over that top area. And by keeping it consistent, we're going to have the whole thing have a consistent pattern that emerges. Where if you start to get a little nervous because you see one side really has a lot of work done and you're getting ahead of yourself and letting your begin flip-flopping back and forth, it winds up with a really wonky finished product. But if you can be patient and just let the glass do its job as you rotate, you're going to wind up with a beautiful piece by the end. You need to rotate more quickly as the bottom becomes a smaller and smaller area that you're heating, and therefore everything is happening much more quickly as the heat is becoming consistent across the entire surface versus just hitting areas or edges of that disc. There we go. Now by holding it like this, gravity is going to pull that and elongate it a little bit. And as it cools, you'll be able to see that there's already a bit of a flower inside there. Now I don't want to wait too long here before I move to the next step. And the next step is to take this black glass and to apply a ring and a base all the way to the bottom. So the first thing I'll do is heat up the black glass, melt the two together inside the flame, and I'm just going to put a little ring to begin with. And once I've got a ring, then I'll fill it from the back and fire cut through. There we go. Now that we've got that done, we'll just heat up the entire base, making sure that it's got a nice consistent glow through that entire orange, and then we'll flatten it out. And we're going to rotate just to make sure that it's consistently thick all across the bottom and that it's symmetrical all the way around. There we go. I really like that. That looks great. So now we're going to grab up clear and we're going to put a handle onto the bottom so we can fire cut through that top lens portion. Here we go. So I'm intentionally getting the clear stick really, really hot. I'll touch the two together inside or outside the flame because I want this to be a temporary connection, which allows the two pieces to both be hot and expanded, and as they cool, they will shrink, and that shrinking will cause the stress where it'll eventually want to just break right off. And here we go. We're going to rotate around consistently, making sure that the heat is migrating right into that area where the bulbous pendant shape is done, and remove any extra. There we go. That looks great. Now move it so that way the heat is migrating right into the tip of this pendant. Oh, got some bubbles in there. I want to move those. Heat that, pull some of that extra out, and making sure that I remove any bubbles. And as I'm removing, I'm also moving away from the candles here, or the torch itself, because it's going to be a little cooler, and as the glass gets real thin, it has a tendency to boil, and that boiling is what causes the bubbles to occur. And once you get away from it being really thin and have more of a flat, smooth surface for the heat to hit and migrate off of, you're going to avoid that boiling and the bubbles on the inside. Alright, we've gotten rid of the extra bubbles. I can see through really nicely now, and what I want to do next is just make sure that I keep the flame hitting just that front lens area and rotating. And what that's going to do is allow the lens to kind of open up, and I'll be able to see more and more of what's going on inside the glass pendant here. Hello, miss.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am wonderful. Just finishing up a demo here on YouTube that is of making a flower pendant. that somebody ordered yesterday, and I'm just finishing up all of the different orders that came in the last few days.
I just wanted to come over and take a look while the kids are waiting for the ride.
Awesome. Now, a lot of the things that I make are really obvious as to what they are. Like a fish sculpture, you can just see that it's a fish sculpture. But I do create quite a few different product lines that have little hidden extra images that you have to go and explore for, like Easter eggs.
Oh my gosh.
So like the ones that are in the bottom shelf over in that display case, those are all puzzles down on the bottom. Every last one that has that shiny dichroic glass is a bit of a puzzle. May I show you one? Here, let me show you one. I'm holding you here, Adia. Did you find it?
I did.
Well done. I need to finish this.
No, you go ahead. I was just looking.
I've got a couple of other things that are even cooler that have fun little things that you can explore. And if you've got kiddos, they can be picked up and dropped on the ground and they'll be fine. So I'm happy to let kids play and explore too. So now that this is cool, we can see inside the flower that's in there. And what we need to do is to figure out which direction is going to be the most aesthetically pleasing to be up and down. Once we've decided which direction we want to be up, and that's it right there. Now I'm going to hit the bottom of the pendant so I can put a handle on the bottom, because then we need to put a loop on the top. So I'll hit these pieces up, touch them together outside of the flame, tap that off, and because we made that connection outside of the flame, it was able to break right off easily. But there is a little extra there, a little sharp edge, so we'll heat that up and we'll remove it. We'll drop that into the water, and now we're going to heat up this bottom part and just flatten it down and make sure that it's looking good. Now we'll just go in, grab our black stick of glass, same as the on the back here. We'll heat these up. Inside the flame, we're going to make a connection. We're going to touch the two together inside the flame. Bring it towards the front of the pendant. Making sure that we've got a nice, good connection there. And then we're going to let that part cool by bringing it out to the edge of the flame, so it's not directly in it anymore. And we'll heat up this about a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch beyond that. And begin working our way around to make the rest of that loop. There we go. I'm looking at it front on and sideways to make sure that it looks aesthetically pleasing and it's connecting. And now we'll just finish this up. A little forward, backward, and connect. Turn the handle, the black glass, at a 90-degree angle so we can remove the extra. Fire cut through. Flatten and smash the back so we've got a nice consistent edge there. Use our tweezers to make sure that, that hole is plenty large enough. So we'll grab it with the tweezers, tap on the edge here, get rid of the sharp edges, and there we go. We've got ourselves a nice little pendant. Alright, I'm going to throw that in the kiln. And that's it for today. I'll see you next time. Peace out, everybody.